Hello, YouTube. This is Alpha White Wolf, one of your hosts here at Gaming Glatorious. My good friend Axel Reaper is unavailable, but he did leave this note to explain his absence. Dear Wolf, I've got a date, so I won't be back for a while, so you go on without me. Axel Reaper. P.S. She has a scythe too, and it's awesome. Oh, I have a feeling I know exactly who he's talking about. In any case, this video is in response to a question posed to me a bit over a year ago. That question being, what weapons and magic would you have given greater attention to in God of War 1? I will admit that the question puzzled me for a time, as I initially viewed all the weapons and magic in the game with very little interest. However, as I took a more of a pro versus con look at the list, I found my answer very different, and actually not too difficult to give. So, without further ado, I present, for your viewing pleasure, my God of War 1 Weapons and Magic Examination. This is gonna be fun. I will start with the weapons, the actual physical weapons, as they are not only the fewest in number, but they're also the simplest in use. The first weapons we have are the Blades of Chaos, given to him by the war god Ares, and fused by chains to his forearms. Kratos makes frequent and brutal use of these weapons throughout a majority of the game. With 5 levels available, and a plethora of moves unlocked with each level up, these are potentially the most versatile weapons in Kratos' arsenal. The blades themselves seem to be about 1.5 feet to 2 feet long and attached to blades that can extend to about Kratos' height, so somewhere between 6 to 8 feet, and can strike about once or twice per second with the right button pressing, except in cases such as this. While not very damaging on their own, being more along the lines of quick hit and get out of the way kind of weapons, the fact that they have such reach and speed ensures that you will be sending out a lot of hits. And even if a few of them miss, the fact that you're landing that many hits, even if they're not very damaging, will have an impact on the battle itself. In addition, the fact that these weapons are the weapons you have from the beginning of the game to nearly the end means that you gain a lot of chances to become very familiar with them. And, by extension, with the various moves that you may decide to use throughout the leveling up. As said before, this weapon has 5 levels, each requiring more experience than the last, totaling to approximately 16,500 experience orbs. This is an expensive investment, but the sheer number of moves and combos made available by this leveling up is a certain advantage to those who like to have those kind of options available to them, and certainly makes it interesting to try and memorize at least a good number of the more show-offish moves. The second weapon obtained in the game is the Blade of Artemis, given to him by the goddess Artemis in the Temple of Pandora. This weapon serves as his heavy hitter, not surprising considering that it looks to be about the same height as Kratos himself. Looking at how easy it is to kill opponents with this weapon, I would have to estimate that each strike with it roughly deals about twice as much damage as the Blades of Chaos. However, this has the problem of coming with the fact that this weapon can't swing very fast, probably about half the speed of the blades themselves. So, it's a bit of a trade-off with speed to gain a lot more damage dealing. I base this more upon the showings of the blade against undead soldiers throughout the areas of Pandora's temple that you explore following your acquisition of the blade. With only 3 levels and totaling about 13,750 orbs of experience, it is slightly less costly of an investment than the Blades of Chaos and doesn't boast quite the same variety of moves, but it does have a certain elegance to its simplicity. Initially, I was going to evaluate these weapons based upon what circumstances they were ideal for, namely groups of small fries, easy to kill opponents like the undead soldiers, or larger, more difficult opponents like cyclopses and giants. However, I had to realize that each weapon is ideal for these situations if used correctly. So, I kind of have to base my opinion more upon their advantages in contrast to each other, simply by the blades having greater reach and speed, and the Blade of Artemis having raw destructive potential. The situations that are ideal for these weapons are also different. Against groups of the undead soldiers, the Blade of Artemis is ideal. It just hacks them to pieces so easily. It's also ideal for Minotaur, Cyclops, those large, slow-moving opponents that don't really rely upon blocking too much. However, opponents such as the Satyrs in the upper half of the temple, or the Medusa, who dodge very well, are definitely opponents that I would use the Blades of Chaos more against than I would the Blade of Artemis. Simply because these opponents can dodge and block those kind of strikes without too much effort. And in the case of Medusa, that means that she's getting a chance to petrify you while you are trying to recover from your failed swing. And in the Satyr's case, he can easily rally from any kind of sudden attacks from you and dish out a few good strikes from his own weapons. So in summary, I would have to say the Blades of Chaos are boasting the majority of advantages, simply because the fact that you have them throughout almost the entire game means that you become intimately familiar with them. Whereas the Blade of Artemis, if you had acquired it earlier on in the game, would undoubtedly be a fan favorite for all playthroughs, except against the aforementioned faster, harder to hit opponents. Now, the thing that must be kept in mind is that some naysayers might say that the blade's greater size means that it's ideal for blocking, such as against the undead archers. However, this is not the case, as even then the arrows will still explode and cause you damage. In those cases, the Blades of Chaos are still ideal because they don't rely upon having you switch your weapons in order to roll out of the way and then having you switch back to the blade just to run a small distance and then have to roll all over again. Simply put, the Blade of Artemis is an amazing weapon if you have the right setting and the right opponents. But the Blades of Chaos can just address almost everything that you can experience in the game. So, put simply, when it comes to the weapons of God of War 1, I have to side with the Blades of Chaos. The familiarity edge, the versatility, the admittedly lesser damage, the greater reach and much greater speed just are so many more advantages than the Blade of Artemis with its admittedly beautiful simplicity and high damage output. So, simply, Blades of Chaos on this one. In regards to the magic of God of War 1, I had to take a little bit more time in order to really evaluate all the spells and kind of determine what environments and what situations they would be ideal for and which ones they weren't ideal for. I am primarily going off of a few watchings of other players on YouTube go through this game and use their own methods, as well as my own playthrough of the game. So, without further ado, the magic of God of War 1. On a side note, the reason why the magic is evaluated separately is because, much like the magic in most games, it draws upon a limited pool of energy, and the moment you run out of that energy, you can't use them. So it's not exactly quite like the weapons, and thus the magic deserves its own separate evaluation. The first spell obtained is Poseidon's Rage, which allows the player to conjure a field of electricity around them and damages pretty much anything unfortunate enough to be caught in that field. With each level, the spell gains greater voltage and radius. This makes it ideal for groups of enemies that are trying to swarm you, or against those larger enemies that can't get out of the way in time. However, the problem with this is that it is a very simple spell, and against opponents who are able to move quickly enough and slide out of that range in the earlier levels, it's just wasted energy. I will admit that out of the 4 spells, I have to evaluate this one as one of the upper 2. It's just that good. I don't know how else to put it. The next spell we obtain is the Head of Medusa, which allows Kratos to petrify his enemies who are exposed to its rays long enough. The problem with this is that the foes are only temporarily petrified. However, this is kind of offset by the fact that they are a little easier to kill. Simply smash into them hard enough and they'll shatter. The problem with that, however, is if you get more than one opponent in the ray and they both get petrified, the time it takes to smash one relatively larger opponent gives the other one, or other ones, plenty of time to break free of the enchantment. Also, the beam itself takes a moment to take effect on the opponents caught in the ray. Against single, slow-moving opponents, like a single Minotaur or a single Cyclops, this could be a very viable weapon. However, against most other opponents, it's just not feasible to use this. Undead soldiers typically attack in groups of 3 or more, so if in a bizarre miracle they manage to get within a nice straight enough line to all get caught in the blast at the same time, that still leaves you with the problem of trying to smash them before they break free. And in cases like Medusa or the Satyr, who could probably move out of the way in time, it's just wasted effort. The third spell obtained in the game is the Bolt of Zeus, which serves as the only real long-range weapon. The bolt can be charged to deal more damage, but it's typically only a nuisance to anything larger or tougher than undead soldiers, and even then it's minor. The final spell obtained is the Souls of Hades, which allows Kratos to summon 3 or 4 souls to attack his enemies. The spell can affect both nearby and distant enemies, and can be quite formidable even at the lowest levels, due to the fact that Kratos can still attack while the spell is active, essentially adding numbers to his own side, if only for a few moments. When looking at all 4 spells, it is clear that there is both a winner and a hierarchy to them. While it is the last spell obtained, and thus its uses are limited in terms of gameplay time, it is the most devastating of the spells. The Souls of Hades are frankly the kind of spell that you would want from the beginning of the game on, and if you had that opportunity, would probably use them every time you could. A good second goes to Poseidon's Rage. It is an early acquisition spell, and the mechanics behind it make it quite dangerous and effective against multiple scenarios, but it still is not quite as good as the Souls. The last 2, on the other hand, are a little less applicable in combat. In third place comes Zeus's Thunderbolt. Its sheer weakness and the fact that its uses are so limited make it a rather unfortunate third in this competition, in this examination. In truth, I only ever have used the bolt maybe twice, and the major one of them was to kill some guy who was holding a switch in the city of Athens. Other than that, I rarely, if ever, used this spell. In last place has to go to the head of Medusa. In honesty, just like with the Bolt of Zeus, I only ever used this spell twice. The first when I had first acquired it, because I had to use it in order to continue on, and during a time when I had to freeze a Minotaur on top of a button in order to get past a puzzle. When I was done with that, I put away that spell and never used it again throughout the rest of the gameplay. It goes without saying then that the Souls of Hades are a clear winner. It is well worth saving up your orbs throughout a long portion of the game to have this spell and have it at its peak power, simply because it is so effective. It is great against Ares during your final battle. I found incredibly relieving use of it in that Shadow Kratos battle when Ares locks Kratos in his mind. But yeah, the Souls of Hades have to get the first place from me. In any case, this is just my opinion and my interpretation of the effectiveness of these spells and weaponry. If you disagree, feel free to comment. If you like this video, please click so below and subscribe. If you have suggestions for future videos or matches for myself and Reaper to do, please either put them in the comments below or direct them to our channel's email. I would also like to take this time to personally thank two great YouTube gamers. Those would be Casual Gamer Read and The Pixelated Hero. Without these two, this video would not have been possible. And Casual Gamer Read, should you be watching this, I also wish to thank you again for letting us use your God of War 3 footage for our Kratos vs. War video. You both have helped us in a tremendous way, and I thank you for that. I advise anyone who's watching this to go check out their videos. They have some really good stuff there. Again, I thank the both of you should you be watching this. And just as a final thing and more to remark upon some comments we've received on our Kratos vs. War video, we've received numerous complaints that the video was too long, that it didn't quite catch interest. I wish to address those right now. We originally did not intend for the video to run as long as it did, however, certain factors contributed to it. Namely, the video itself was our first video. This was sort of like our getting our toes wet kind of video, our entry into our channel. Furthermore, the biggest reason why it took so long was because it was unscripted. Largely so, anyway. Aside from very small bullet points to try and direct and guide the commentary, the video itself was entirely unscripted. This unscripting led to a bit of unnecessary rambling, which, understandably, caused the video to lengthen considerably. The big thing about it is that our video has been described as in need of being more like ScrewAttack's death battles, whereas we give a very nice brief overview of the character and then throw them into the battle and see who would win. However, one thing that I will note about ScrewAttack is while they do make very, very good points, they unfortunately do a bit of glossing over. They give very brief, very on the surface kind of looks to the characters themselves, throw them into an animation designed to capture the interest of people watching it, kind of their shtick, actually, and then at the end usually point out some small detail that wasn't really covered in order to explain why a certain character won and why the other lost. While this is a very interesting and thought-provoking formula for them to use, it is not something that we here at Gaming Glatorious have been interested in doing. Furthermore, We ourselves are still trying to figure out our own method of doing this. This video and its combatants were so close that we needed to go into the very fine details between the two, do a real close side-by-side comparison in order to find the victor. Later videos will likely not take quite as long, simply because in those matchups, one opponent might have an advantage over the other, or vice versa. Something that gives them an edge over their adversary, or something that gives them a crippling disadvantage to their adversary. With that little thing out of the way, I believe it's time to end this video. This is Alpha White Wolf, signing off. So keep calm, and hail Kratos.